It's time for Lefties Losing It. And we're going to have some shameful antics from CNN shortly. You will not believe how low they have sunk. But let's start tonight with the leader of the free world facing down demented protesters ruining everyone's dinner. President Trump was at Joe's Stone Crab in DC to enjoy a meal with VP J.D. Vance. Marco Rubio was there, Pete Hegseth.
Thank you. We have a safe city now. Great job.
But it wasn't long until the usual suspects were ruining everyone's delicious crab meals with their crazed screeching about freeing DC, freeing Palestine, and they were also calling President Trump Hitler. Watch the president walk towards them as they made spectacles of themselves, now international spectacles.
Enjoy your dinner.
Now, here is a hint for the diabolically dumb women in that clip. If Trump was Hitler, if he was a modern-day dictator, you would never be seen again. You think you can scream insults to, I don't know, Xi Jinping or Kim Jong-un? If you did, you'd be in a Labor camp or dead in quick time. Now to a delightful clash between Tucker Carlson and billionaire and dimwit Mark Cuban. Yes, he's both. Unusual combination, I know. Here they are discussing funding for Ukraine.
Half my family's Ukrainian from my grandparents. And so, personally, I think we should help. But I don't have a studied answer for you.
How much money have you sent to Ukraine?
None.
Oh, so what do you mean by we? You're the one whose family's from Ukraine. Like, why don't you send them $1 billion?
Because I'm trying to fix health care.
Why don't you fix their health care if you're like so deep? If you think we need to help, why don't you start? How about you first? Yeah. I notice that's never like even an option for anybody. It's like, we need to help. That's not what charity is. Forcing other people to help is not charity.
Here's the good
vanity.
news.
Love that. We need more Carlson v. Cuban content in our lives. Now to another clash, but this one was very much one-sided, despite the best efforts of MSNBC host Mika Brzezinski. Watch how Border Czar Tom Homan demolishes her ridiculous claims and calls out her earlier misleading coverage of ICE operations.
I see on the show this morning you have Governor Healy talking about ICE doing enforcement operations at a church. False. Didn't happen.
They were parked there. They did not do an operation there. She said they were parked in a public space legally.
But to say that and to push that out there puts fear in the immigrant community. So let me tell you what's happening.
To do that puts fear in the community.
Right.
To park the ICE agent's vehicle
they're on a
near
public
a church.
street.
They are on a public
street.
She said
they're on a public street waiting to respond to a criminal alien release pulled aside the road. Let me tell you, in the last couple of days, what's happened in Boston. They've arrested Victor Gomez Perez, a 33-year-old criminal alien from Guatemala, with charges of aggravated rape, assault and battery with dangerous weapon, indecent assault and battery on a victim 14 years or younger. They arrested Kaylee Espinosa, a 33-year-old criminal alien from Colombia, with charges of aggravated assault on a pregnant victim. They arrested Joshua Gonzalez, a 24-year-old criminal alien from Dominican Republic, with charges for trafficking heroin, morphine, opium, resisting police, disorderly conduct, and drug distribution. They also arrested Samuel Armando Barrero, a 20-year-old criminal illegal alien from Guatemala, pending charges for assault and battery on a child. This past year, I've seen innocent Americans raped and murdered by people who are not supposed to be here. So rather than going back and forth and say, well, ICE has got a car parked near a church, that is ridiculous.
Ridiculous indeed. But Mika was not done yet. Having hit rock bottom, she decided to start digging.
I would argue that actually the ICE vehicle parked outside a Spanish mass is a frightening sight, given what has happened in this country. I also, with respect, sir, thank you for the information that you have shared on this show, but we would appreciate all of the information. all of it, all of the data that you say you have.
I've done this show several times. Every time on your show, I speak with integrity, I speak with honesty, and I speak with facts. The bottom line is, because of all this false narrative, and you using the term disappearing people is disgusting.
Well, that's what's happened. That happened to the group that was sent to El Salvador.
She is determined to make a monumental fool of herself by repeating these debunked Democrat talking points. Even some Democrats, the sensible ones, have stopped making these claims, but not Mika and not MSNBC. They are going down with the ship.
Why a lot of these people have been disappeared. You say you have data. We would love to see it. The American people should see this data.
Well, here's the rhetoric again, right? You just meant disappeared. That was a ridiculous thing to say.
Why?
Because ISIS is doing the same thing we've done for decades. But because of the last 4 years, ISIS wasn't allowed to enforce the law. But we're doing the same thing right now that we did when I started back in 1984. ISIS agents are enforcing the laws enacted by Congress.
Now to CNN disgracing itself again by accusing Donald Trump of seizing on the murder of a young Ukrainian woman, a murder they had refused to cover until now.
Ukrainian refugee's murder caught on camera. It is absolutely horrific. Trump is now seizing on this to push his nationwide crackdown.
And it gets worse. Have a listen to what CNN anchor Abby Phillip had to say. She seems to be more mad at Charlie Kirk for bringing attention to this sickening crime than the barbaric thug who killed an innocent woman.
When you are mentally ill, you have a hard time knowing that you are mentally ill. But also, I mean, people like Charlie Kirk, Van, they've been looking for opportunities to make this some sort of like reciprocal George Floyd situation. And that's the part that I think he's almost giving away the game. And it's sad to see a lot of people going along with it.
You know what? I'm almost speechless. Comparing that poor innocent woman to George Floyd is bad enough, but get ready to be truly disgusted. Here is Van Jones.
We don't know why that man did what he did. And for Charlie Kirk to say, we know he did it because she's white, when there's no evidence of that, it's just pure race mongering, hate mongering. It's wrong. Then he says that if something like that had happened the other way, there would be sweeping changes imposed on society. Where is the George Floyd Policing Act? It didn't pass.
Well, no evidence except the killer saying, I got the white girl, and the fact that he was seated with 5 others around him who he didn't attack, who all happened to be black, but he targeted Irina pretty much as soon as she sat down in front of him. All of this had White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt fuming when she addressed the media earlier today.
Irina Zarutska was stabbed to death on the rail system in Charlotte, North Carolina, by a savage career criminal. The most enraging and unacceptable part of this story is that her death was entirely preventable. DeCarlos Brown never should have been on that train that night. In fact, he should have been behind bars. Previously served 5 years in prison for a robbery with a deadly weapon charge, and he had also forfeited bonds 3 different times, twice in 2014 and once in 2023. Despite all of this past documented criminal history, when Brown was arrested yet again in January of this past year, a Democrat judge, who I will add was a strong supporter of former Vice President Kamala Harris, released this insane criminal once again without requiring him to pay any bail. He simply had to sign a written promise to return for his court hearing. Think about how crazy it is to ask a career criminal, someone who by definition repeatedly breaks the law, to just sign a written promise and come back again another day. This is madness.
And Karoline Leavitt had a message for those in the media who had refused to cover this shocking murder.
And perhaps most shamefully of all, the majority of the media, many outlets in this room, decided that her murder was not worth reporting on originally because it does not fit a preferred narrative. Many of the journalists in this room spilled plenty of ink trying to smear Daniel Penny for defending a subway car from a deranged lunatic in New York City, but none of those same reporters lift a finger to write stories about an actual murderer. Here's the truth that every American must know. Too many innocent people across the country continue to pay the price of the failed experiment known as cashless bail.
Joining me now is political advisor and commentator CJ Pearson. CJ, the full unedited footage is now being widely circulated of that shocking murder, and I'll ask you about that in a second. It is one of the most chilling things I've ever seen, not just the brutal attack, but what happened afterwards. But firstly, tell me about the reaction of the media, since they've been called out for the manner they have covered this story and, in many cases, the manner in which they have refused to cover this shocking story.
Well, first and foremost, thank you again for having me, Rita. And I got to level with you. You know, that video is not just sickening, but it's disgusting. For many of the reasons that Karoline said, it was preventable. But of course, because of the disastrous progressive policies of, you know, far left politicians like what we are seeing in Charlotte, someone like that was allowed to walk free and commit the act of violence that we saw in that video. When I talk about the media's reaction to this, it's even more disgusting, right? If this was a black man who was, you know, killed by a white man, this would be wall-to-wall coverage, unending. And that is exactly what we would see coming from folks like Al Sharpton, who would be marching the streets right now, probably calling for America to be burned down. But because this is a white woman, but because this is a different situation, of course, as Karoline said, doesn't fit their preferred narrative, they want to ignore it. They want to accuse conservatives of overreacting and pouncing on this situation. No one's pouncing on anything. What we're demanding is the return of law and order in this country. And I don't think it's a radical position to hold to believe in that.
Well, the full unedited version, and we're not going to play you the moment of the attack. It is just too shocking, but a warning nevertheless, because some viewers may find this distressing. And it is distressing, the lead up to the attack and what happened afterwards. That's disturbing enough. After Irina was stabbed, there were 5 others sitting nearby who didn't go to her assistance, CJ. The Good Samaritans who eventually came to help her were further down the carriage, and they are to be applauded for trying to save her life. But it was really quite chilling to watch people who failed to check on her after she suffered those horrific injuries.
You know, it was a disgusting display of cowardice, you know, to be quite honest with you. And I'm glad that there were people that eventually rose to the occasion to render her aid. There was one man who actually took his shirt off and attempted to apply a tourniquet to stop the that was going on, and God bless him for it. But again, you know, what was disgusting, of course, was his actions, but also the fact that no one's sprung to help. I think it goes to show not only, you know, do we have a problem when it comes to actually courage in this country, but also too, they were probably afraid as well, you know, which goes to show this man had no business being on our streets, no business being out in the community. And the judge that let him out, we should know his name as well.